Now, to discuss this, I was joined earlier by Clive Williams, who's a former Director of Security Intelligence for our Defence Forces. He's now a visiting professor at the Australian National University's Centre for Military and Security Law. Clive Williams, thank you so much for joining me. This is the worst border clash between India and China in more than 40 years. Why has it happened now?
Well, I think it was probably the case of two working parties in the Galwan Valley running into each other, and it's an area that's disputed, like many areas along that border. And it seems to have been quite a violent confrontation, though, because although they weren't using firearms, at least 20 Indian soldiers have been killed, and the Indians claim that they have intercepted Chinese communications saying that the Chinese had 43 people killed or injured. So quite a large-scale fight involving metal rods and clubs and so on.
Well, there seems to be a lot of hatred there, and maybe also a problem with India being able to evacuate its wounded from high altitude in time. Now, officially, both sides, Clive, seem to be playing it cool, playing it down. But how easily could something like this get out of control, given that both sides also have quite strong nationalist pressures on them?
I think in the case of China, of course, there are a lot of younger diplomats who subscribe to this wolf warrior philosophy where you actually respond quite robustly. But I don't think Xi Jinping would like that. I don't think he wants that. But it depends on, you know, how much influence he has over the foreign policy aspects and how much he can control what happens in China. On the other hand, in India, it's a different issue because you've got a free media, which, of course, will try and ramp this up, in particular saying that this is unacceptable, 20 dead is not something we can agree with, and there needs to be a robust response from the Indian military. Maybe the reporting that there's been 43 Chinese casualties is a way to offset that.
Well, maybe it is, but once you start riding the nationalist tiger, who knows where that will take you and whether you'll be clawed in doing that. Now, I played earlier some footage of a former Indian Army Chief of Staff saying that this was Xi Jinping trying to create a distraction, had been boxed in by all these various issues, and is saying, look, you know, I'm taking on the Indians over here. I'm not sure that I see that, but is this part of a pattern of China flexing its muscles? After all, it did send these troops up there, and they seem pretty gung-ho.
Well, of course, China and India fought a border war, and there have been skirmishes along the border ever since. But I think that it's simply that both sides have got quite substantial military presences there, and it's a pretty awful operating environment, probably very stressful for commanders on both sides. And given the fact that you know, there's not an agreed borderline, that it's a line of actual control, which is sort of really not very specific, it's quite likely that these sort of clashes will occur on a fairly regular basis, but they don't normally lead to death. As you mentioned earlier, it's been more than 40 years since there's been somebody killed that's been reported anyway. So this is a considerable escalation in the situation.
Well, we shall see where the public in India and where some of the nationalists in China take this, what they make of it.